Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. The criminal trial of Donald Trump was turned over to the jury today. 12 of Trump's fellow New Yorkers, I say that somewhat tongue-in-cheek, deliberated for a total of about 4.5 hours today before being dismissed for the day shortly after 4 o'clock. Now, this afternoon, the jury sent 2 notes to Judge Juan Merchan requesting to rehear 4 sections of witness testimony as well as the judge's instructions. Court will reconvene tomorrow morning at 9:30 with the court reporter reading back those relevant parts of the transcript before the jury continues to deliberate. Now, the one consistent rule about juries is that you just do not know what they're going to do. When you put 12 random strangers in a room, the outcome is never obvious. But we do know that there are 3 possibilities, broadly. The jury could acquit Donald Trump on any or all of the 34 counts against him. All 12 jurors have to agree on that unanimously. We could get a hung jury if all 12 jurors cannot agree either way. It only takes 1 holdout for that outcome. Or the jury could decide to convict Trump if they unanimously agree he is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Again, there are 34 separate felony counts at play here, so this could be mixed and matched in a variety of ways. Understandably, a lot of people are very invested in the outcome of this trial. I do think it matters. But no matter what happens, I really do believe that the process has already been a victory for the rule of law and a rebuttal to the worst, most dangerous aspects of Trumpism. The fact the former president was investigated, charged, and tried by a jury of his peers shows that no one is above the law in America. Of course, that's not Donald Trump's vision of the law. In his view, there is no such thing, crucially, as a neutral, free, and fair process, like a trial or an election. All that matters is outcome. If he wins, it was fair. If he loses, it was rigged. He has said this about everything from his legal trials to multiple presidential elections to the Emmy Awards. That is Donald Trump's authoritarian view of the world. Power trumps all. The powerful get to dictate what happens. It is the opposite of our core civic commitments of equal rights, equal protections, and equal justice under the law. That we are all subject to the same fair processes, and then we respect the outcomes of those processes. It's the basis of the liberal democratic project. In a way, this first criminal trial of Donald Trump has been a big test for America. For the first time in our history, a former president has been prosecuted and tried for committing a crime. We know this process works in some of our peer democratic countries. It's happened in lots of places. In France, in South Korea, Taiwan, where former presidents have been successfully tried and convicted. We've seen the process play out here on the state level. I mean, 4 governors of Illinois have been sentenced to time in prison. Most recently, Rod Blagojevich, who had, by the way, his sentence commuted by none other than Donald Trump. Connecticut Governor John Rowland was convicted twice for corruption, exactly 10 years apart, spending 2 stints in prison. The former state's attorney of Baltimore was just sentenced to a year of home confinement after being convicted of perjury and mortgage fraud. Now, with the first trial of Donald Trump nearing its conclusion, this principle of equal justice for all in America is a pretty bedrock one. And just to be clear, it used to be, I think, a consensus one, and it no longer is. I mean, Trump and his Republican toadies, the people that are going up to New York dressed like Donald Trump to go stand in microphones, they all reject it. And yet this trial is a real success in its own right. For weeks, Donald Trump has had to sit in a courtroom where justice is day in, day out dispensed to regular citizens, faced a judge who was fair and firm while both sides presented their cases to a jury of his peers. All of that happened while another group of Trump lawyers are trying to convince the Supreme Court that he actually has a special status as a former president. He is a special kind of citizen, unbound by the normal processes of mere mortals. Now, Donald Trump does have more access to wealth and power and fancy lawyers than 99.9% of all criminal defendants who step into a courtroom in America. And yet the process played out exactly as it should for any American. He went through the full normal process of a trial, as any person accused of a crime would. That's what's at stake in this New York courtroom, and is what is at stake in the Supreme Court's impending decision about Trump's so-called presidential immunity. Ultimately, our entire liberal democratic order rises and falls on our ability to produce fair and neutral processes that apply equally to everyone and lead to outcomes we can all trust. If it fails, we have Trumpism, authoritarianism. So whatever the jury decides in Trump's case is not actually as important as that process. The trial of Donald Trump, I believe, has proven that that process works, independent of the outcome. And that alone is a rebuke of everything that Trump and his movement stand for. Harry Litman served as Deputy Assistant Attorney General at the Department of Justice. Catherine Christian spent over 30 years as a prosecutor in the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. They both join me now. As someone that worked in that office and someone who's been in the trial every day, do you agree with that assessment that as a process, as a sort of, test of American equal justice under law, that independent of the outcome, since the jury has it now, that this has been a success?
I agree. It has been. Forgetting that it's Donald Trump and a former president of the United States, this trial was orderly. Donald Trump, inside the courtroom, behaved himself relatively. The jurors came on time. There were no hiccups throughout the trial, and most trials are like that. There are hiccups. And you're right, he's not above the law. No one should be above the law. And most defendants, in many ways, he has received special treatment in some of his cases, and just that he has 4 indictments and he's free.
Right.
So that's one thing. But it is good for people to see, whatever the verdict is, whether it's a conviction or acquittal, or if there's no verdict, a hung jury, that's how the system works, and you have to respect that.
It's an important and I'd say beautiful point, really. He was brought to heel all during this trial. He had to do as others do, and it was a full and fair sort of oversight by Judge Merchan. But Merchan is really channeling the law here. It was the law that made him sit, the law that made him show up, the law that subjected him to the same thing that happens to everyone else. People are understandably jittery now. Could there be, say, a hung jury? But unanimity is one of the features of due process that he received, and in a way, that's secondary. It's possible a political response. He could be convicted and sail through. But the fact that the process has happened, it's majestic.
Yeah, this is my point. I mean, again, because we just don't know what the jury's going to do. And I almost feel, if this was the Jan 6 trial where I feel like, I know he's guilty. I saw it. I've read the report. In this case, I think it was a compelling case. And if I as a watcher, I probably think he's guilty. But again, that independence of the process. And one of the things that I've been trying to balance here, and I'd love to hear you both on this as we sort of await this, is that, at one level, it's like you don't want to be like, well, everything that runs the American justice system is great, because it clearly is not. And we know this, and you know it having been in that building for 30 years. So I don't want to say, well, if he's convicted, it's fine. People get wrongfully convicted all the time. At the same time, there's something so insidious to me about the entire Republican Party marshaling behind, as a kind of party line, that this is a corrupt enterprise to its core.
And that was, to me, the most offensive part of the trial, which wasn't about the trial, but the Speaker of the House of Representatives, senators, Congress people, outside of a courthouse while a trial is ongoing, basically trashing the process, criticizing the judge, talk about attacking the independence of the judiciary, criticizing the judge's daughter. That was a statement against the rule of law. The trial was ongoing, and they were doing that. And, it was shameful to me.
And that's even kicked up a notch in the last few days, where you have Republicans lying. Either they're stupid or pretending to be stupid, I never know, but about what exactly the jury's instructions are, saying, well, they don't even have to be unanimous in the same crime. That has to do with this sort of step-up thing. But you have Marco Rubio and others, just promulgating these sort of lies and calumny against Merchan and the whole process happening now.
That's exactly right. But that's the political sphere. Somewhere in a courtroom, a kind of homely courtroom in Manhattan, everything that we hold dear happened, and it really demonstrated his being subject to the same processes never. I think just that part itself, in fact, kind of brought him down. He's someone who embodies the principle that nobody can tell me what to do, and here the law told him what to do, and forcefully for several weeks.